Hi guys, so before we get into it, a quick disclaimer that there will be spoilers today. The Creeping Flesh is 52 years old at this point, but you know what? The movie is free on YouTube, so why not go and watch it and then come back to the review? So this one was done by Tygon Productions, which confused me at first because it was only a few weeks ago I was covering the movies of Ty Burn. Very easy to get those two mixed up, I feel. And it never ceases to amaze me that I keep coming across brand new Lee and Cushing films that I've not previously seen. Those two were so prolific in the 60s and 70s, whether working together or apart. So in this movie, Peter Cushing is playing Professor Emmanuel, a scientist who has his own massive, luxurious house, and his basement is basically his science lab. So if you've seen a lot of Hammer, this type of setup will be very familiar to you. I expect it will especially bring back memories of The Curse of Frankenstein. Emmanuel wants to cure all human beings of ever being evil, and he thinks he can do this by messing around with blood cells. He's got these weird humanoid remains in his lab that he picked up from a trip to Papua New Guinea. And as this movie goes on, it becomes very obvious that whether accidentally or deliberately, these remains will come alive and go on a little bit of a rip and tear, to use some Doom terminology. But Emmanuel thinks he's onto a winner with these experiments. He's got his eye on the Richter Prize. And I'm guessing that because of when this film was released, this prize has got nothing to do with this guy. If there was an award named after Total Recall Richter, I think it would have to be for great endeavours done by people with no hands. That would earn you the Richter Prize. But getting back to The Creeping Flesh, this is not a great movie from a creature feature standpoint. The remains on Cushing's lab table only get up about 5 minutes from the end, and the horror that follows is of a dubious quality at best. But I still enjoyed this film from start to finish, just because of the human drama. There's good exploration of madness and the dangers of not treating it properly, and also bad decision making within a family environment under the guise of protecting loved ones, I suppose. Christopher Lee plays an interesting character. He's the brother of Emmanuel. I can't remember this guy's character name, so you know what, I'm just going to call these two people Lee and Cushing out of pure laziness. So Christopher Lee owns this mental asylum in the same town where Cushing lives. And at first, you'll kind of assume that Lee is the immoral brother, the slightly bad one, because he's very cold and he doesn't care about his patients, clearly. But as the movie goes on, you'll realise that actually both brothers have got their good points and bad points. It's not that Emmanuel, played by Cushing, is the good character that we're rooting for, and Christopher Lee is playing the black sheep of the family we should all be wary of. Not at all. And there comes a very pivotal moment in this where it's revealed that both brothers are working on the same kind of science, conveniently. And at this point, Lee makes the suggestion that they both work together. They pool their resources, they share their ideas, and Peter Cushing rebuffs him. And I think the movie is saying that if they had worked together, then a lot of the bad things that happen in this could have been avoided. Similar to The Curse of Frankenstein, you've got one guy who is going off on his own, and because he's somewhat immoral, then this is going to lead to murder and bloodshed and all sorts of bad things occurring. But if Frankenstein had been working in a little group of like 5 or 6 people, then they could have all have voted on certain things at different stages of the scientific process, and horrible things could have been avoided. So the message here in The Creeping Flesh, very much a case of human beings work together as much as possible and you can avoid bad things. But I think it's interesting that it's the secondary character in this, the secondary brother, who is the one who wants to work together, and it's our main character who doesn't want any part of that. I think normally the main character would see the light here and suggest working together, and it would be the other guy who would have the big ego, and so he doesn't want to go along with that. So it's interesting that the approach that's done here. There's a character in this called Penelope who is playing Cushing's daughter, very well played by Lorna Heilbronn, who I'd not previously heard of before watching this, but I kind of wish that she'd been in more of the types of things that I watch, because she's very good. Penelope is kind of an old-fashioned name, I feel. I've never met a Penelope, But I could understand if it's sort of being phased out because it doesn't roll off the tongue very well. If you try and say it too many times, it kind of just gets lost. At least for me, it does. I don't think I could date a Penelope unless it was this one, maybe. But I'm confused about where this character is at the start of this movie. She just seems to be sat around the house in a dress doing absolutely nothing on a day-to-day basis. She's clearly in her early to mid-20s at least, I would say, and yet she does nothing but sit around. Like, what is the plan for this woman? Is she just going to sit around until one day a horse and carriage rolls up with an eligible suitor pop out from it, and then she'll go off, get married, and be bored in somebody else's house? I presume that Cushing is just being overly protective of her. He doesn't want her going off into the outside world. At one point, she sat in an armchair reading some kind of trade publication just called Romance. And Cushing comes in and he absolutely loses his mind when he sees Penelope reading this thing. He snatches it off her and he's, oh my God, I'm going to take this off. Imagine if this magazine had been called Casual Sex, or she'd been reading some kind of Mills and Boon novel called The Housewife's Illicit Affair. I think Cushing would have had a coronary and dropped dead on the spot, and we wouldn't have been able to have the rest of the movie. You must not learn about sex, ever, at least until you've been through the menopause, I reckon. Eventually, Penelope does venture out into the world. I'm kind of surprised that she doesn't do this when she first sees the sunlight. And it's very telling to me that the first place she heads to is the local tavern. It seems to me, from watching a lot of Victorian-era horror movies, that there were only two things that people got up to back then: getting drunk in a tavern or sitting at home conducting unethical scientific experiments, one or the other. There was no way that Penelope was going to leave the house here and go and sign on for a college course or join a chess club or sit in the park feeding the ducks. No, she was always going to head for a tavern and try and discover her inner hussy. There is a very unseemly rape attempt scene that happens here, and it's quite violent, actually, while it's happening. It feels very realistic, although thankfully Penelope is able to fight the guy off. It's her bad luck that the first guy she meets out in the world is this really lecherous sort. He literally comes out with the line of dialogue, well, if your goods weren't for sale, why are they on display? I could imagine guys in 2025 saying that, if not directly to a woman, then maybe between each other as they stand at a bar and look at women across a dance floor. Very misogynistic, awful sort of attitude. But I think it's a little bit of a shame that the movie is very clear that everything that's happening to Penelope is because of the serum her father has given her. Because in reality, the rape attempt alone could send a woman into a complete spiral to the point that she would need a lot of care and medication. But the movie doesn't try and explore that. Everything that's happening to her is totally because of the serum. Interestingly, Penelope, once she's had the serum, is clearly worse than the escaped lunatic. I really liked this character. He's very misunderstood, I feel. The police talk about him as if he's this dangerous animal and they might have to put him down because he's so wild and untamable. But actually, he's just a socially awkward guy. He doesn't murder anybody once he escapes. He touches this woman inappropriately on the shoulder in a tavern, but beyond that, he doesn't do an awful lot that's bad. He has a chance to molest Penelope and he doesn't take it. But Penelope, on the other hand, once she's had the serum, she's horrendous. Like, she just murders this guy in cold blood and then chuckles about it. I think what the movie is saying is that, yeah, by all means, try and come up with drugs that could calm down evil people and make them more sedate. But if you get those drugs wrong, then you could do a hell of a lot of damage. You could turn normal people really violent. I really liked the flashback scenes involving Penelope's mother, aka Cushing's wife. It's sort of implied that this woman was sleeping around on Cushing even before she went crazy, which is interesting. I think what the film could have benefited from is additional flashbacks showing the expedition to New Guinea, or maybe the film could have just opened with those scenes. I think it would have helped me better understand all the stuff to do with the blood vessels and the Sky Fathers and the weird humanoid creature beneath the ground, because at times and Cushing gabbing on in his science lab. I didn't fully understand everything that he was saying. The science is a little bit convoluted at times throughout this movie. And at the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, all of this is bullshit anyway, because you can't have evil as an actual physical compound inside blood vessels. That's just not how it works. Something else that does not work is the concept of asylums as presented in this society. People are just basically locked up to die. They're not given any treatment. Once you are committed, that is it, seemingly. Your fate is sealed. I'm glad in more modern times that people are able to get proper psych treatment, medication. They have the chance to recover. They're not just put behind bars. If this had been done for Cushing's wife in this film, then a lot of bad things would not have happened. Penelope still would have had a mother, Cushing still would have had a wife, it all would have been hunky-dory. As far as the ending goes, with Cushing locked up, I was kind of indifferent to that. I mean, it's a bit harsh just putting him in there forever, but at least he's got his lab full of equipment and he's got things to be getting on with. Penelope's just got this much smaller cell where it looks like she's got nothing to do, and that's why she's gone feral. Did they not even give her her trade publications to read? Maybe not. This character, Penelope, she's the true tragedy of this story, because she doesn't have agency over anything that happens, basically, and this is her fate. Whereas at least Cushing had some choices available to him, and ultimately he made the wrong ones. As to the fact that Christopher Lee's character seems to make out like a bandit and he gets the Richter Prize and all the acclaim and he's doing really well, that didn't appall me, really, because, like I said earlier, he's not a completely bad character throughout this movie. Both brothers are kind of equal to me. They're both a little bit immoral and they're both sort of good in other ways. So, okay, one of these brothers looked out and the other one looked in, fine. But in terms of whether you're coming to this film mainly for the horror, I think you'll be disappointed, because the creature that gets out is a little bit pathetic. He walks around in a like a monk's robe, and when it comes to his big kill scene, he doesn't even kill Cushing, he just takes a finger. Oh, how vicious a creature. It just took a finger and then it left, you know what I mean? But that didn't matter to me, because I found the rest of the film really interesting, with lots of talking points. It was a very stimulating piece to sit down and watch, and I liked it a lot. Right, it's time to get to the bag of terror so I can show you what score I'm going to give The Creeping Flesh. Here's the bag. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 Michael Myers carving knives out of 5. Really good movie, and I would definitely recommend you check it out on YouTube. So we'll leave it there for today. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be back very soon. Bye-bye.